I was wrong about something, oddly and ironically, that I was initially right about. I changed my tune because the evidence presented to me in real time forced me to change my tune. Well, now I'm changing my tune again. Brian Cashman did not build a good enough team. So, and this is not an overreaction to getting your asses handed to you by the Orioles. The Yankees got straight up drilled. And by the way, even the game that they won, they didn't get a hit off the Orioles bullpen. That game was a little top heavy. So, once again, the Orioles put the Yankees in their place. But it's not even an overreaction to that. I want to flush through this, all right? And it's not about whether or not the Yanks are good. Yeah, they're good because their two best players are amazing. But can you show me a team that is built properly that as we get ready to get into July, you've got to address first base, you've got to address second base, you've got to address third base, you've got to address catcher, you've got to address closer, and you've got to address another high-leverage arm in the bullpen. So, while I was initially right, and then because Soto's so amazing and Verdugo's done well, I said I was wrong. I'm here, unfortunately, to tell everybody that ultimately I was right. Cashman did not build the right team.
I respect that. I know where you're coming from because it happens all the time. I feel like, for me, with Daniel Jones, I was right initially to bury him. I get sucked in after the playoff game. I buy into him, and then look what happens last year. So I don't like when that happens, when you change your mind off of something you initially believe in so strongly. Let me calm every Yankee fan down here, BT, and you yourself included. This is still a good team. You said that. I know that. And the Yankees have to prove themselves against Baltimore. And I was saying for a while, this team is flawed. And their superstars were masking their flaws. But just because they've lost 5 of 7 from Baltimore, or the 2 out of 3 without Soto to the Dodgers, or the 2 out of 3 to the Red Sox, it doesn't mean the Yankees still aren't as good, if not better, than anybody else. I mean, what? So one team has had their number, and we're supposed to go into a panic now and say Brian Cashman isn't good enough? He brought in Soto. He brought in Verdugo. He brought in Stroman. He'll fix the bullpen. As far as the infield goes, yeah, I mean, that's a lot. They're going to have to figure that out. But the Yankees they're still going to be just fine.
Well, just fine's not good enough. Just fine? No. I mean, just fine is good enough for the Orioles last year. Maybe the Kansas City Royals this year. Maybe the Guardians this year. Just fine is not supposed to be good enough. It's not supposed to be the calling card, the mantra for the 2024 Yankees when you're all in. Yeah, I'm not interested in being just fine.
If they won 2 out of 3 in this series, which they easily could have,
but didn't,
would you be saying all this?
You know what? Listen, I would.
Because it should be then.
I was going to say,
right.
It's not just. That's why I said it's not an overreaction to yesterday's beatdown. I mean, listen. I mean, when you have position players pitching, obviously emotions will be all over the map. To me, I watch the Yankees. And I watch the Orioles when they play each other.
Right.
I don't mean when the Yankees play other teams that they beat up on. And again, the Yankees have a really good team. But when these teams match up, I see myself, and I can't be alone in this, I see a dramatically different level of energy that one team exudes compared to the other. It just seems like, and I know they're not trying to go through the motions, but you watch Baltimore, there's a bounce. They're more dynamic. They're different. They look different and they play differently. They're faster. They can beat you more ways. I mean, in a one-run game, who do you like better?
Yeah, Baltimore.
You like Baltimore, right?
Baltimore's proven to be better. The only thing with them is I do not trust their closer.
Well, that's true. But do you trust Holmes? Maybe a little bit more than their closer, Kimbrel, but not enough.
Well, here's the biggest thing for me from yesterday. And look, we'll get into all the different angles of it and move it forward with the Yanks need. But if I were a Yankee fan, I'd be concerned first and foremost about Luis Gil. Not that he's going to fall off the cliff, but from yesterday's game in particular, this is the one guy that beat the Orioles earlier in the year, and then to get tattooed like he did yesterday. And I'm not just talking about just the one start. I'm talking about, because when we project forward, like if I am going to make the case that the Yankees are going to beat Baltimore in a best of 5, best of 7, whatever it may be in the postseason, it's going to start with Garrett Cole and Luis Gil 1 and 2 in the rotation.
Correct.
So if Gil is going to start to become human or peter out a little bit, that compromises what I believe the Yankees' greatest strength or advantage over the Orioles would be.
I understand that. I don't think it's an overreaction. I think Luis Gil has phenomenal stuff. But, even aside from yesterday, the last couple of times out, I've talked about this. He's been a little, lessen command, putting guys away, get a little deeper in the count. And maybe that's the hitters making the adjustment. I'm sure it is. And now the onus is on him to make an adjustment to them. And that's part of being a young pitcher or a young baseball player. But I'm not really worried about him. But I go back to Cashman here, okay? And, there was, in years past, all right, the Yankees need a little lefty specialist. When they were at their apex. Maybe you need a little tweak here, a little addition here, a little...
Lefty bat in the outfield, one bat.
Coming off the bench, a little reinforcement here. This is not, in my opinion, a little tweak. Again, that's why the way I say this, you got a problem at first, you got a problem at second, you got a problem at third, you got a problem at catcher, and you have a couple of issues in the back of the bullpen leading up to not just the closer, but, 7th, 8th inning as well. So this is not a tweak. And when was the last time Brian Cashman made an incredibly effective in-season, season-altering trade?
Yeah.
He usually goes for the bargain bin.
Right. And it usually comes up short here. He's trying to get one of those pitchers in here. And to further your point here, now, again, I think the Yankees will ultimately be fine, and I trust Brian Cashman to get what he needs. Now, he's got to do it, but I trust that he's going to fix the bullpen, and he's got to go get a bat or potentially two. It's a lot to ask, especially for a team that are talking World Series and bust. But here's why we might have been overlooking Cashman's offseason and kind of why I did criticize it going into the season and why now you're saying that you made a mistake maybe buying all in. Giancarlo Stanton, sticking with him. We both said that was going to be a mistake. Mm-hmm. Now, Stanton has been terrific, right?
He's been very good.
Okay, so he was right. We were wrong on that one.
Okay, 1-0 Cash.
DJ LeMahieu.
1-1.
Anthony Rizzo.
1-2, meaning to us.
Gleyber Torres.
1-3. Yeah.
It's not like these
letting Wandy Peralta go. 1-4.
All right, but it's not like these, because we're talking about the infield. It's not like these are new issues out of nowhere, oh, wow, well, this guy shockingly wasn't good. No. LeMahieu, Rizzo, Torres have been the same for years now.
That's
Stanton's the one that was going in the same direction, but he's been terrific this year. So Cashman gets a big win for that, sticking with him. All the others have come up short. So that's the problem.
And let's face it, the only reason Cashman stuck with Stanton was because of the contract, which is such a burden, you probably couldn't convince anybody to take it. Now, I can't prove this, but I highly doubt that Brian Cashman stood up at the end of last year when they convened down in Tampa to set things up for this year and was, banging the table. Stanton's going to have a bounce back year. It's all right, what do we do with the money? There's not a whole lot we could do. Let's hope we can squeeze something out of him before. So what I'm saying is, even with Stanton, he stumbled upon that.
And one other thing, BT, we were talking about, because when it factors in with Stanton or the lineup, we're getting guys back, and okay, well, it's going to look a little different. You could lengthen out that lineup, or let's say move somebody to first. Dominguez is out another
2 months.
The idea of him now coming back, so you're taking that away.
Yeah.
What the Yankees were even 2 weeks ago is not what they are right now. But I still think everything's going to be fine. They're still one of the best teams in baseball. We are caught up in the moment. We're emotional. We're rational. Ultimately, I think the Yankees will be fine.
We are caught up in the moment, but what I've said right now, I do not think is irrational. 888-808-1019. BT and Sound on the Fan. Brandon's here to Sal the Cotta Show inside of our Town Fair Tire studio. Friends at Town Fair remind you, as you always get the guarantee lowest prices from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Let me get Anthony in Toms River, New Jersey. Get things going on a Friday on the Fan. Ant, what's happening?
Hey, good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Usually I agree with BT 95% of the time, but I got to agree with Sal here. I'm going to give a little bit of a more positive perspective. I don't think this team, what you're seeing now is not the team that you're going to see in October. I do think Cashman's going to make some moves. He's going to address the bullpen first and foremost. Who knows? Maybe they put Holmes in the 8th inning and they bring some guy that can actually strike people out in the 9th inning, So maybe they switch up that dynamic a little bit.
Yep.
I know 2 years ago he brought in Frankie Montas, which obviously did not turn out very well. But if you go back to that moment, he didn't make the deal for Castillo because he would have had to give up Volpe. Right?
Sure,
so we have Anthony Volpe, and he wanted to bring in Montas because he matched up well with Houston. So I think he'll do his due diligence to find players to match up well with Baltimore. In terms of the position players right now, I understand second base, first base, they're glaring holes. Trevino obviously can't throw people out anymore. but I think
Anything
by
else?
October.
Hey, hold on, Ed, I got to stop you for a sec here. Ed, hold on a second. Ed, hold on. So you don't agree with me, and that's fine. I respect that. But in essence, you are, because everything that I'm saying, first base, second, third, catcher, close. I mean, you're acknowledging that they've got to do a severe overhaul in multiple spots. So I also
agree, but
go ahead.
I think it will get addressed, is what I'm saying. I think by October, I think this team's going to look different, and I know
they better. Otherwise, they're not going to be in October. They're not going to be there long.
Right, and obviously health is a big issue, but I do think Dominguez is going to be a big part of this team come September. And
I hope so.
I think he'll probably take over like the Grisham role. He'll probably be the fourth
how can you
outfielder.
count on that, though?
Yeah,
how can you count? Hey, first of all, we're talking about a guy with Dominguez real quick who played, 8 games last year?
I think it was 7.
7 games.
7.
Okay, 7
Yep.
games. He looked like Mickey Mantle, but it was 7 games. Then we talked about, and I understand why, the excitement about getting him back. Well, he'll be back mid-season, whatever, maybe May, June. And now he's hurt again. So, and he's not going to be back for another 2 months. We're getting toward July here.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to rely on Dominguez to come back and be an integral part. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying counting on that to happen now, I don't think you could do that if you're the Yankees. I still ultimately think, if they move Cabrera to third, he played yesterday, nice to see him in there, his energy, that will be an upgrade at third. You could get rid of Glaber and bring in somebody else. Doesn't have to be a star or that's going to upgrade that position. Then they're going to need a legitimate bat at first base. One way or another, third base, first base, they're going to need a legitimate bat. They have to shore up the catching. They have some work to do here, but still, we're talking about fine-tuning, and maybe that's not the right word here to use.
I don't think it is. I think it's more like an overhaul.
I mean,
it's not a tweak, Sal.
But they still are one of the best teams in baseball.
Understood. But, I get this a lot, from certain, non-Yankee or Yankee haters. You guys want an all-star at every position. Guys, understand that. And by the way, there was a point when Yankee fans kind of expected that. We don't have 5 all-stars? What's going on?
Right.
But it's not that. It's acknowledging that they're just far too deficient in too many areas. It's not like it's not like we're clamoring for a surplus of stars. It's like, no, there's 4 guys who are hitting every night who stink.
Right.
Sometimes 5.
Well, it's what I was saying, the bottom of the order early in the year. And I was saying even at that point, I didn't trust Stanton. Thank goodness for Stanton, because imagine if Stanton wasn't doing anything. Then not even Judge, Soto, and Volpe, the best 3 in baseball for me. Not even they could carry you if it wasn't for John. You need somebody else. So Verdugo and Stanton have been obviously in addition to those top 3. So they got 5 guys that have really been clicking. But it's the rest of the guys, the depth, the defense, very shaky for a team that we expect to be a World Series team. But in comparison to everybody else, maybe outside of Baltimore, they're still better.
Yeah, and by the way, and this is a little thing, but it's really not. You can live with some spots that are, C level-ish, but when those players are C, or maybe in DJ's case lower than that, they're just not effective, and they also don't project any energy. You watch DJ, and I know he's trying, and I'm not here to disrespect him. He's had a really good career. He's been a great hitter. Couple of years he was phenomenal. 2 batting titles, come on. But he doesn't emit an ounce of bounce. There's nothing like his Gleyber Torres. It looks like he's going through the motions.
Right.
So they're not only they're not playing well, but they just look like they're sleepwalking, and that's contagious. Joe's in Peekskill, BT and Sal on the Fan. Joe, what's going on?
Well, BT, there's an old Four Top song. It's the same old song, and that's what you got with Cashman. This is the guy that runs a 100-yard dash, 80 yards in the last 20, and shits the bed.
Whoa.
Hey, buddy, come on now. Oh, hey, now can't be dropping that. I mean, I know tension's high a little bit. Emotions are flowing. Everybody's ticked off at Cashman again. Brian Cashman had about a 2-month respite from our venom, and it's never personal. And by the way, I know that Brian's going to try to make moves. I just hope that he knows that they've got to be more than just kind of little surface reshufflings. They got to bring some horses in.
Yeah, I do think, like I said, my bigger concern.
And if you got to give up some prospects, Cash, you better do it.
Yeah, I mean, he gave up a lot to get Soto.
I don't think he gave up that much.
Well, he gave up 5 guys.
He gave up bodies. He didn't give up a ton.
Yeah, but I'm saying the amount of you only have so much. What prospects are you going to be able to give up? You think some teams are going to be like, oh yeah, well you gave up 3 of your top, whatever it may be, 50 guys, and now you're going to go into the depth a little bit more. Plus, we can talk about this at a later date, but we're getting close to it. You look at the trade deadline, BT. Look at all the teams that are in it.
I know.
We talked about this a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
How, the more teams that are in it, the less teams that are going to be selling. So if fewer teams to be selling, meaning it's going to be hard to, you're going to have to overpay potentially.
That's the point. So there's only, obviously the Marlins and the Rockies. I'll tell you, I wouldn't mind taking the Rockies third baseman. I've always liked that kid, watching him play against McMahon against the Mets.
Yeah.
Little pop. I like him.
He fits Cashman's
Yeah,
model.
bring him in. Strike out a lot. Hit some bombs, short porch. But between the bad teams who are so clearly out of it now, and there's only 4 of them.
White Sox, Angels, A's, Rockies,
A's would
Marlins.
be, and then 5. There's then 5. Maybe one more, but there's not many. It is a very jumbled year, as we know. And to Sal's point, and it's a good one, so not only do you have a lot of teams vying for the same players, but when you've got, 5 or 6 teams lined up and they're all trying to get that one piece of meat, guess what? You just keep up in the ante in terms of what you demand back to make the deal happen. And one thing that we know about Brian Cashman, he is averse to giving up a lot to get something, and that's fine. I'm okay with being, pragmatic and not overly reactive in these situations. But I'm telling you right now, I'm going to say it, this Yankees team will not win the World Series. They will not. 888-808-1019, BT and Sal on the Fan.